You know, every week I start off this show when I'm hosting. Thank God it's Friday. Sometimes that really, really fits. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't. But in this particular case, it definitely does. It's been a long week. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and today's host of Green Rush Live. You know, one of the nation's longest running live business talk shows all about the cannabis industry. We've been doing this now for over a year on Fridays, and we're always so proud to have a great group of guests that join us to chit chat about what is going on in the world of cannabis business. Well, we've got one here today. His name is Morris Beegle, and he's a return guest. That's right. He's a return guest because he's been with us before. I'm pretty sure, Morris, you were involved with our program that we called Cannabis Chat back in the day, in the fall of 2020. Does that sound accurate? Just go along with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And I think I was on your In the Weeds with Jimmy Young as well.
It's that Jimmy Young show again. Yeah, within the weeds.
Is.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I know he would too. All right. So let's give you a little intro. Let me tell you who you are, just in case you didn't know. You are the Hemp King. What do you think?
I don't know about that, but
I'm in the
hemp industry.
All right. You are the president and co-founder of We Are for Better Alternatives, WAFBA, the
WAFBA.
co-founder and producer of the Southern Hemp Expo, the NoCo Hemp Expo, and you are also a podcast host and publisher of Let's Talk Hemp. Did I get them all?
And we've got Silver Mountain Hemp Guitars, which is right behind me.
Yeah, I noticed quite a few guitars there. Maybe before you leave, you might give us a little riff, maybe going out to the break at the end of the half hour. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
We'll have to see. I pulled a guitar over here, but it's out of tune. I'm getting ready to, this is made out of industrial hemp right here.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Let me ask you, are all the things that you wear and do made out of hemp?
Often, but unfortunately this shirt is not and this hat is not, but I did have a hemp shirt and hat on yesterday. I should have worn it for today's episode, but I didn't. I was just feeling rock and roll here.
Right. I get it. Rock and roll and we'd go hand in hand. That's the way I look at it. I do want to ask you, you have an event coming up. I want to make sure we talk about it right off the top because it's in Nashville, Tennessee. And with the guitars behind you, I'm really going out on a limb thinking that music played a role in this, or was Nashville picked for another reason?
No, it played a role because I come from the music industry, and when I started NoCo Hemp Expo, it's like Colorado's a great place, and where else can I have cool expos and conferences? And Nashville, which I had participated in my music business days, it's like Nashville's a great place. They've also got a good hemp scene and a good hemp program, and they're welcoming to the hemp industry. And then we've also done Hawaii as well. So it's like Colorado, Nashville, Hawaii. Those were kind of where we planted our initial flags.
There you go. And the hemp world has been in the news more lately, and it's no fault of the industry. I want to make sure you hear that right away from me, because I don't approve of what's been going on in Washington, D.C. about a lot of things, but particularly of trying to figure out how to regulate the hemp industry. And there's a lot of controversy as you look at the issues about the FDA and infusion, about Delta 8 now being derived from hemp. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think the industry faces?
Well, getting it regulated by the FDA has been probably the biggest challenge that we've had. And I think it was pretty clear when we passed the Farm Bill in 2018 that Trump signed. Not that he had anything to do with it, because he really didn't. And it's not like Trump was supporting industrial hemp. He just signed the Farm Bill that happened to federally legalize industrial hemp in all parts of the plant, all derivatives, all cannabinoids. And what that did was it threw the ball into the FDA's court, where they should have regulated CBD as a dietary supplement and a food and beverage additive. And that is yet to happen. And because of this, it's affected the revenue of our industry and the investment in our industry by billions and billions and billions of dollars. And it also has created this new channel of synthesized cannabinoids, including Delta 8, THCO, HHC, and all these other letters that are coming out. It's like, where the hell did all this stuff come from? I don't even know what you're talking about. And that was never it really wasn't the intent of the hemp industry to have all of these now synthesized derivatives that are intoxicating. But are they legal? Well, we're getting rulings around the country in different states. And so, you know what? This is legal. And it's like, it just makes it more complicated for fiber and grain, so we can build hemp guitars and build houses and make bioplastics and have good nutritious food and superfoods and so forth. All of a sudden now we're dealing with all the synthesized cannabinoids that get you intoxicated, and the marijuana industry doesn't like that. And so big cannabis has been throwing crap all over the hemp industry because it's like, hey, that's our space, you can't do that. Oh, now you've got Delta 9 derived hemp products that have 5 milligrams and 10 milligrams. That's too much. And they're pissing all over us, and we don't like that. And so it's just creating all this controversy and divisiveness between us. And it's like, man, this sucks.
Yeah. It's tough to be in that industry when you really don't know what the rules are, right?
Right. It's like Wild West here. And I got into it because I want to make hemp t-shirts and hemp paper and build houses and hemp guitars and have good hemp superfoods, and we could have food for animals, and we can have dietary supplements that are very healthy and nutritious that we should be taking to help regulate our endocannabinoid system. But here we are, and I do throw the blame primarily on the FDA. The FDA has dropped the ball, and a lot of it, I don't know if they've dropped the ball or they're just saying, hey, pharmaceutical industry, we're doing your bidding, and we know we just want to kick the can down the road, and you guys position yourselves so you can control cannabinoids like you really want to. And then you've got big food out there, corn and soy, that's like, hey, put the brakes on. We don't want to have animal feed made from industrial hemp, even though that's generally recognized as safe. It's great human food, but yet we don't know if animals should eat it or not because there's not enough studies done. It's like, that is absolute total bullshit.
Right. Well, that's good. I knew that that's exactly the word you should be using, by the way.
It's bullshit. And it's the FDA, and they can go F themselves.
Yes. All right. I get it. Yes. And so let me ask you, this is an interesting question as you're talking about all these challenges that are and delays being caused by federal organizations. You think that's on purpose?
Yes, I do. And I don't think it's a Republican thing or a Democratic thing. I think it's their thing.
And
they're all guilty.
I will definitely remember here in Massachusetts when the adult use bill, question passed the ballot box in 2016, and our Republican governor, even though we're a pretty liberal state in Massachusetts, Governor Charlie Baker said, let's take our time here. Let's make sure we crawl before we walk, before we run, which, by the way, is okay. I get that. And he did appoint the right people, or at least a group of people that put out these regulations from scratch. And we have a vibrant market for both cannabis and hemp here in Massachusetts. However, it's that delay tactic. And to me, this is an injustice. This is not fair. This is not fair to the people that have put their money in. This is not fair to the farmers who then, I can't tell you how many times I've heard farmers complain that they've got all this hemp and they don't know what to do with it now.
Right. Well, what they've done with it is they've shifted it over to folks who then turn it into Delta 8. And I think that that's good, because it's like we don't want to screw the farmers, and the farmers have a bad taste in their mouth because of this. And now that we want to grow fiber and grain, there's just a lot of people that don't want to be in the hemp industry because of these delay tactics that have happened. And again, I throw it back on the FDA, and there's other players involved there behind them, pharmaceutical industry, big food. And, I'm sure there's others that we're not even sure who it is, big cannabis as well. But
let me ask you a question. Shouldn't hemp be regulated by the U.S. Agricultural Division rather than the FDA?
Well, it is from a growing standpoint. And the USDA has really, they're actually, I'm not going to throw them under the bus at this point, because I think that they're trying to do the right thing. And the FDA has, these alphabet agencies don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And maybe there is stuff behind the scenes and that they do see eye to eye, and I'm just ignorant and naive to it on some of it. But they are trying to do things where they're trying to provide what they consider realistic regulations, which I don't think we're quite there yet. And hopefully with the new farm bill that'll be coming out next year, we make an adjustment from 0.3% to 1%. So we don't have to destroy any crops. Farmers have less risk there. But farmers shouldn't be having FBI checks. They shouldn't have to test this crop and spend thousands of dollars. Why would I want to grow hemp when I can grow corn and soy and wheat, and I don't have to jump through all these hoops and spend all this money and make less money? It's like, it should be very easy for them to grow this, because it should be a commodity crop that can go into all these different industries, whether that's the paper industry, the automotive industry, the textiles industry, the construction industry. And that's what we're growing it for. It shouldn't be different than any other crop.
Right. Aren't those the same industries, by the way, that prohibited cannabis back in 1937?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I know.
Look, to me, they are trying to do everything they can to make it as difficult as possible to have this industry. And I say this, and the plant is a cannabis plant. It's hemp, but it's a cannabis plant. And they're doing everything they possibly can to retard the launch, the growth of the industry. And I give the people that are in the industry a lot of credit, because they're not getting the return on the investment that they expected because of these delays, because of this bureaucracy in the federal government down in Washington, D.C. And again, I keep going back to it. It's unfair. I don't understand. I don't think these legislators, any legislature, but all of them, throw them all under the bus as far as I'm concerned, really understood what they were doing when they were passing that first farm bill, and didn't understand what a cannabinoid was from a cat, for crying out loud. They had no clue, right? And they just did. They were only concerned is, well, that one over there, that drug, it's a plant. That drug, gets you high. It gets you intoxicated. And then, of course, the scientists explain, well, that's true. However, it has hundreds of these little chemicals in it called cannabinoids. And you don't actually have to have a lot of THC to create a good cannabinoid like a CBD or a CBN or a CBG and actually build an industry around it. Right?
Exactly. For sure. No question.
So if I understand
going back to it, they mission accomplished on their part for making it very difficult for this industry at this point.
Let me ask you a question. And I read 30 newsletters a week. I try to keep up on as much other news as possible about the industry and other industries. And I just wonder, how long can it last? I mean, how long can they sustain any growth, even if it's infinitesimal growth? And I don't mean about the amount of crops, but I mean actually building a business with getting better return on your investment, better return on your crops. They're doing an injustice to a billion-dollar industry.
Well, hundreds of billions of dollars. Whitney Economics, Bo Whitney, who I don't know if you've ever had on your show before.
Yes, we have. Yep.
And Bo's put out some great data about, if we had 2% of this industry, 5% of this industry, 3% of this, where we'd have a $350 billion industry of industries that we can put our materials right into and just take a sliver of. And all of a sudden, our industry is way bigger than the adult use industry. It's ridiculous. And none of it's intoxicating. All of it's health and wellness and environmentally eco-conscious materials that's going to green up almost any company that's out there that's trying to help their ESG rating moving forward. And the ESG thing has got its own controversy, but it's a thing and it's going to continue to be a thing. And hemp can help with all of that.
Yeah. And I just don't know. And now because you've got Delta 8 out there, and by the way, if I remember correctly, Texas, has Delta 8. Texas has Delta 8 legalized, right? So,
Correct.
so the politicians that were afraid of the other plant with that THC that gets you intoxicated, it completely backfired because now in their state, okay, you could get a Delta 8 product and get high from it.
Right. And they just outlawed the smokable flower, at least growing it there, but they can still sell it there. I mean, and Delta 8 may not be legal today. That's the thing. They flip-flopped all over the place. I think that there's still stores selling it. They're not just selling CBD and full spectrum stuff. They're selling Delta 8 and HHC and all of the other derivatives, which you've got courts ruling different ways on this across the country. You got the Ninth Circuit Court saying, hey, it's legal. It's a derivative based on the Farm Bill, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, okay.
But, but the people that are making the rulings don't understand the chemistry.
Exactly.
So before they even talk about it, there needs to be some education. There needs to be, and I look, in my soul, I'm an educator. I'm actually going back to teach again this fall, one night a week, and I'm really looking forward to it at Curry College. But I just don't understand how the elected officials, okay, that the people put in place are just not motivated to learn more. It's almost like a necessary evil weed for them to actually learn about, and they don't want to. And again, it goes back to the stigma of the other plant, right?
Well, I agreed, but there are some legislators out there and government officials that do care and have been advocates for this, particularly our governor, Jared Polis here in Colorado.
Yep.
And while not everybody agrees with some of his positions, I give credit to Jared for understanding both sides of the plant or all sides of the plant and doing a good job as being a navigator and working with the legislators, working with all the stakeholders on the hemp side, the cannabis side, and we all don't agree, but he understands. He's a smart guy, and he's taken the time to understand. And there's other guys in Oregon, and there's different people out there that do it, but they're an anomaly in our system.
I'm not sure you saw the news item about the state of New Jersey.
What is Chris Christie back?
No, that wasn't the news. Okay.
Okay.
It had to do with interstate commerce. Excuse me. Pardon me. I didn't mean to do that into the microphone. Okay. It had to do with interstate commerce, that they see an opportunity to do business with other states outside of the borders of New Jersey with hemp products and cannabis sativa products. And a lot of people, we've actually had a whole show on this within the last year. I'm going on a limb. I knew it was within the last year, on the fact that there's actually this clause that exists that one business law professor argues they can do interstate commerce right now, according to this clause that was back in the 1920s. It had something to do with the New York harbor and moving from New York to New Jersey on the water. And anyway, I wish I could spew all the little details that we had, but what effect is that going to have when the interstate commerce officially begins on that industry, on hemp?
Well,
you can do it now, can't you?
Yeah, we can do it now all over the place. When it happens with adult use cannabis, then it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Law enforcement needs to be educated. And I truly believe law enforcement doesn't want to waste their time on this. They know that this should be at the bottom of their food chain when it comes to dealing with the things that they need to deal with to make sure that they are proper peace officers and taking care of their communities. I don't want to throw cops under the bus. There's bad cops out there that are jerks and they shouldn't be on the force.
And they're good ones. And they're good ones too.
There's a lot of good ones. I mean, the vast majority, but if you have 5% that are bad and you've got 1 million cops out there, that's 50,000 cops.
Right. Well, we do know that there's been some punishment to police officers over the last couple of years. So at least the justice system in that department is working. And I know we just passed the magic 420 time. So if you're out there watching and you'd like to partake, Just tell me what state you're in. We already have Wisconsin and Alabama checking in on the chat room, which I think is wild. We usually have people from Arkansas and Washington State and all that. But let's get back to hemp. I'm going to make you the hemp czar.
The hemp czar. I would be a good hemp czar. I would be just, I would be fair, and I would work across all aisles. And there should be more than 2 aisles. That's another thing that's just crazy as F.
No,
I just say crazy as fuck, because there's multiple aisles, and there should be. That way we all come together and we share ideas. We don't have to agree on everything, but hopefully in the end we come to a reasonable conclusion and understanding, and we can proceed forward. No,
there's way too much finger pointing, middle finger pointing sometimes too, at both sides of the aisle. And just because one political party says one thing, the other political party thinks they're obligated to say the exact opposite. And our country is getting more and more split up. If you don't think we're having a cold civil war right now, you haven't been paying attention, right? And I just thought that America, the whole idea of America was to open up your mind, share your thoughts. Don't be afraid of doing that, and find common ground with your neighbor who may not look like you. He may not even be in the same political party as you or the socioeconomic class. That's what this country has to do. And we're not doing it. And cannabis and hemp are perfect examples of it. It's very frustrating.
It is frustrating. And all I know is we are for better alternatives. And our platform is to bring diversity, bring a variety of different ideas together, all walks of life, whether you're straight, gay, bi, tri, Christian, Jew, atheist, Muslim, black, white, brown, green,
one family of humanity.
Exactly. We are one family. We're all humans. We're all citizens of the earth. And can we just be respectful to each other? We don't have to agree on everything, but you know what? We all want to have families and take care of our own and just be kind.
It would be nice to just be kind. I agree with that too. We've got Oklahoma checking in now too. So I want to give you another chance to give a plug to your show coming up in Nashville, and how people down that way or can check it out online and see what's down there, and maybe take in some music and go to your hemp show. Give us another plug. Tell us how they can find out about it.
All right. We're going into the 4th annual Southern Hemp Expo in Nashville. It's next weekend. It's the 19th and the 20th of August. SouthernHempExpo.com. We've got a business conference on Friday. We've got a farm symposium on Saturday. We've got an expo hall that's open both days. Tons of vendors, all aspects of hemp, food, CBD, Delta 8, building materials, bioplastic, hemp guitars. And we've got live music. We've got food tastings. We've got lots of cool things going on, and we've got a great group of speakers coming out, and we've got an after party at the 5 spot in East Nashville, live music, throwing down Nashville style. It's going to be a great time.
It is, and everybody's chomping at the bit to get out of their little pandemic hangover and get out and party again, and hopefully the heat has gone down a little bit in the South.
It's supposed to be 83 to 85 degrees during our show, which is fine. It's not 95 degrees. So we're looking at good weather next week.
Or more. It was actually in triple digits a lot down the South and for a long time. And now at least things are easing up a little bit. Hey, Morris Beegle, if they want to sign up for your newsletter and follow you, how do they do that? Give yourself a plug.
Well, go to letstalkhemp.com. That's our media platform. You can find out about Southern Hemp Expo, NoCo Hemp Expo, everything that I'm doing. We've got a newsletter that goes out every week. We curate news from all over the world. We put out our own editorial content, and we try to keep people informed, not only about hemp, but happenings in cannabis as well.
Well, that is awesome. I wish you the best of luck. Hope you have a lot of success with your show down there. And I know you'll check in on a regular basis. You're welcome here, Morris, anytime you want to talk hemp.
All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy. You do an awesome job. Keep educating the masses on all sides of the plant, and keep strong. We're fighting the good fight.
I appreciate it. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk with two guys that are educators that are in colleges, educating young people about the future of this industry. So don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us.
With the Reg CF offering that we're doing, we have basically pretty much gone through all the steps you need to do when you're doing an IPO. Now, we're not sold on the public markets, which is still considered private equity. but you basically buy shares we use the Start Engine platform, and now anybody can go and buy shares. When Facebook first launched, the banks were buying shares at $5 and $10. It IPO'd at 20. I put in a buy offer as just a random Joe retail customer. I put in a buy order the night before. Computers execute instantaneously, right? I think my buy went in at like $34 by computer execution by the time it opened, while the banks got to buy it all at $5 and $10. Well, this allows you and me to be able to buy into these pre-IPO companies at favorable rates. It stands for Regulation Crowdfunding. And what it is, the SEC put together this plan after the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009, where we were bailing out Wall Street, the big bailouts, too big to fail. So we're bailing out huge banks like Bank of America, we're bailing out Ford Motor Company, et cetera, while the little guys on Main Street are closing their doors. Oh, well. And there was so much backlash that initially under the Obama administration, they created this Reg CF plan. And it was so popular and it worked so well that under Trump, they doubled down on it and expanded the program. And what it does is it allows the average retail investor like you and me to be able to invest in pre-IPO companies, basically buy shares of companies.
This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. Welcome back to the second half hour of Green Rush Live here on a Friday afternoon at Pro Cannabis Media. I'm the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and a reminder that please like, share, and subscribe to not just this show, but all the other shows that Pro Cannabis Media produces or distributes. We've got about 10 of them now, and I'm proud of all of them. I'm most proud, not of mine, not of Green Rush Live, but I'm really proud of the news show that we put out every week with a roundup of news stories. We had a Canadian reporter, Debbie Facey, this week. We had an Israeli reporter, Danny Oberman, this week. We had 8 other contributors from different states all over the country giving their 90 seconds of what's going on. And I'm just really proud of the fact that we're able to do that every single week. And I'm going to do a shout out to our video director, because Dan French is the one who compiles all the stuff and puts it together and makes it look like a really good news show, which it is. And you'll be able to watch it after this show is over at some point. And I think we're going to get out a little bit early today. So it follows this show. Check it out. And Elena Pinto is the anchor of our news. And Elena has, I'm telling you, and Tim, you have a few Emmys in your backyard. I know you do. She has network talent, as we say.
Back shelf.
Yeah. That shelf. You definitely are having Wi-Fi issues because we're getting the first word and then not much else. So up to you how you want to play this. I know my video director, Dan, well enough to know if you just want to call in on audio, we'll create a little graphic that says, voice of Tim Egan, if you're comfortable with that. Totally up to you, because I want you to contribute. Oh, there he goes.
All right. Like that? Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, actually, Dan, is it better? I think it is. We'll give it a shot. Tim Egan, tell us your life story. Oh, silence.
Well, now you don't know. Now that you know what I look like.
Yeah, now that we know what you look like, but your Wi-Fi is still.
Yeah, I think there's a delay.
Yep, there's a delay and a breakup. So I'm going to chit chat with Rob Mejia, and you and Dan can talk in the waiting room on the Zoom side, and Rob and I will carry until we can get you back on here nice and clean. Is that fair enough? Yeah,
we'll assume that's a yes.
We'll assume that's a yes. Exactly. Knocked 3 times. All right, Rob, Stockton University, professor there. You're the director of education and community outreach for our community harvest out of New Jersey. First of all, how's it going? Are you looking forward to the fall? And what are you most excited about in your home state now of New Jersey, which is a new adult use state?
I'm excited about many things. So I do have a couple classes coming up in the fall. I am teaching the preparation for cannabis internship class again. Those are students who want to take an internship and probably work in the industry. And I always enjoy working with those students. The nice part is they come in, a few of them know where they want to go, but there are quite a number who don't know how many, for example, back office jobs there are, how many ancillary jobs there are, that you could do something in cannabis, hospitality, and tourism, that you could be an entrepreneur, an inventor. I mean, it's just, I always tell them you're kind of limited by your own imagination. So I do love that class because they're motivated and they want to get in the industry, and I know they're going to make a difference. So I have that class. And then I have a social justice and cannabis class, which is one of the few in the nation. And that is always an interesting class too, because we do combine a lot of elements of why is cannabis even connected to social justice, and what does it mean, and how do we help people who were harmed by the war on drugs? How do we get them involved in the cannabis industry if that's where they want to go? And if they don't, how do we give them other skills too? So I love teaching those classes. They're coming up soon. I'm excited about that. And I am excited that New Jersey finally is starting to approve applications. There's a lot of construction going on. There are some shortages in supply chain with construction though. So I've heard from a number of people that say that they're building their facility and they're supposed to be up and running in about a year. And many are worried that they're not going to make that because they can't get the supplies for HVAC or whatever it is. So we are moving though. We are building a lot of dispensaries. We only have 24 that are open at the moment, but we've had well over 1,000 applications in retail, processing, and manufacturing that are going through now. So we'll get going. Take us another 9 months, year, 18 months, but the market's going to look very different.
Yeah, and Massachusetts is now 4 years into it now with over 240 dispensaries in this state. Many of them are clustered in different communities, and sometimes they're across the street from each other. So there's still a element of wild west going on in the distribution of where these licensees can actually open up shop. Let's see if Tim Egan is back with us. Tim, are you with us? I just feel so bad. I feel so bad. I do. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
No. I hear you guys perfectly.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't know what else to tell you. We'd love to get you involved because I know you're going to be working with the Castleton University out of Vermont. And I'm going to give you an opportunity. Let's just see if we can get through it. Tell us a little bit about the new courses that are going to be offered at the Vermont State University group at Castleton or something like that, right?
So let's see if you can hear me.
Yes, much better. Yes.
I'm not sure what I did, but being a 40-year TV producer, I should be able to figure out how to have a Zoom with two other people. And it looks like a dog in the background there, Rob. So good for you. Jimmy, thank you so much for having me, Rob. Nice to be on this show with you. I'm a big fan of Pro Cannabis Media and the content that Jimmy has been providing to the industry. I am a 7-year part-time faculty member at Northern Vermont University, our Linden and Johnson campus. I was asked, because of my role as a chair of the House Democratic Cannabis Caucus in the state of New Hampshire in the House of Representatives, to join our sister campus at Castleton, where we actually have a 12-credit cannabis certification studies program, a course in growing, a course in culture and anthropology, and I'll be teaching Cannabis, which is helping small owners, licensees, who may not have all the business skills, maybe social equity applicants, maybe small business owners, not big MSOs, figure out how to make sure they have a business structure heading into it. And then our last 3 credits of the 12-credit program is internships, and I'll be helping manage that and basically running it because I do that for our Northern Vermont University campus. So I'm pretty excited to be part of what's going on in a growing industry in Vermont, as probably Rob is in New Jersey. I for 1,000 times, Jimmy and I will talk about, I'm struggling to legalize and commercialize cannabis in New Hampshire. So let me work with states that want to study it and learn it and grow it, like Vermont. So that's a little bit about what I'm up to.
Yeah, that's great. And I did meet two of the professors, and I think one of them, Phil, does a sociology of cannabis course of some kind, right? I can't wait to have a conversation with him. I think that's a great way to look at this industry.
Dr. Phil LeMay is the department chair for sociology and anthropology at Castleton. He's the director of the Cannabis Studies program. And one of the things I thought which would be interesting and fun and worthwhile is to sort of better understand the program. I'm actually taking his class, Cannabis and Culture, which is what Phil teaches. That's yes. And I know actually, I know he'd love to have you be part of his course. And I know you've talked with him about potentially coming on the show sooner or later.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. Rob, how many cannabis courses are there at Stockton University?
Well, we have a couple different programs. We actually have a 4-credit set of programs so people can actually minor in cannabis studies. So you can get any major, take any major you want. We probably have about a third of the students come from some kind of health background, which makes total sense. We have about a third that come from a business background, and the other third have any major you can imagine. And then on top of that, they take 5 cannabis classes. They take an introduction to medical cannabis, law and cannabis. They generally take a holistic health or cultivation class. They take a preparation for internship class, and then they take an internship for credit. So they do actually work at dispensaries and marketing on hemp farms. You name it. We've placed some students in some really interesting places. So those are the 5 classes they take, and they have their minor in cannabis studies. Then, because we were offering that, we had so many people in the community say, well, how can I get education? How can I pivot? I'm not ready to enroll back in school. I may well have my degree. And so we offered continuing studies. And in our continuing studies program, we offer 11 classes. 9 of them are cannabis specific. 2 of them are general. One is general retail, and one is general introduction to business for people who don't have business backgrounds. But other than that, we have 9 specific cannabis classes. If someone takes 6 of those, they get a cannabis certificate. And we also have some people who will take a single class, like they'll want to do an intro to horticulture because they know they want to grow. So we have that. Those are our educational initiatives. And then we also do a lot of public events. So every quarter we have a free Zoom panel. We actually have one coming up on September 9th to look at the new rules and regs that the NJ Cannabis Regulatory Commission just put out. So that's a 325-page document that we are summarizing for our audience. We always do a panel on hemp. We do one on cannabis tourism. And we also have a cannabis career fair. So Tim, on our campus, we've actually had 6 events where we have a cannabis career fair and business expo. We have vendors there. Students get interviews. We have panels. We have networking. It's an amazing event that goes about 6 hours. And we've had over 350 people attend both of our past 2 events. So when you talk about education at Stockton, we have career, we have community, we have online, we have public events, and then we have opportunities for companies to work with us on research projects, non-THC based, non-medical, usually in the form of surveys. So I count all of that as kind of our education balloon.
Now, do you know about the newsbank.com?
I don't.
Okay, so this is a great time. Tim, I know you do because I've talked to you about it. So there's a company out there, newsbank.com, that has, I think it's 13,000 publications archived on the cannabis world. And that includes a lot of the biggies: MJ Biz Daily, Weed Maps, Leafly, Cannabis Business Executive. I'm rattling these off, but the point is, as a educator, you can go contact them and gain access to their materials for your research, for your curriculum. It's obviously there's a subscription fee, but it's discounted for educators, and it's very reasonable even for non-educators, to be honest with you. And now the only video on those publications is the Pro Cannabis Media Archive, which is vast. I got to tell you, it just is. I've done a lot of interviews in the last couple of years, and they've archived them all, and they're all out there, and they're available for educators. Tim, how long have they done it, or is this the first year at Castleton?
We're actually in our third year of the program. It started in 2019. It took, we created more of a little bit of an online aspect during COVID, the program still grew. And now, after 3 years of about 60 students going through the program, 25 of them are actually working in the industry in and around New England. And I must say this to Rob. Rob, where were you in Stockton when I was a Ramapo High School, Wyckoff, New Jersey graduate who went to Glassboro? That's how old I am. They don't call it Glassboro anymore. Where was that program then? Because I would have stayed in New Jersey and studied the cannabis industry. Instead, I went to Glassboro and practiced the cannabis industry, if you know what I mean.
Well, we started developing our curriculum in 2016. Of course, it had to go through a lot of different hands, as you can imagine. And then we had our very first class in fall of 2018. So we've not been doing this much longer than you. But our enrollments have grown 500% since the very first time we offered the class. And we also had we had about 30 graduates this last spring. And I do know a bunch of them that are all the industry as well.
And there's more and more traditional, I don't mean that as a derogatory term, state universities, if you will, embracing the curriculum that my friend Max Simon and Greenflower have put out, and they're all credited. And that was the group, that was actually the website that I learned a lot when I first got my medical card. I watched, it was highly produced videos with doctors and nurses explaining the endocannabinoid system and how it all works. The thing that is so amazing to me, and both you guys are going to relate to this, I know, there's so many different departments, right, that this can touch. It can touch the law, the people that are interested in lawyers. It can touch chemistry. It can touch the botany world. It can touch the sociology world. And you know what? We'll put the party world in there too, because it's part of it. You can overdo it, guys. That's why I preach responsible use and getting yourself educated about this product more than anything else. I never thought that I'd be sitting here talking with two great guys about this subject in that you're both involved with universities. The times have changed so much now, and there's other established universities that have been doing this for years, like Oaksterdam out in Oakland, California, like the Cleveland School of Cannabis in Ohio. Those are specific colleges that you can go to and get a degree in. And I'll be honest, this is a very important development in the industry, because when you go into a medical dispensary or even an adult use dispensary, you are going to go in blind, let's say, and ask questions of those people behind the counter, and they have to be educated too. You need to rely on them. And I just wonder eventually if we get to the point where you must have a degree or a certain amount of hours of study in order to become a bud tender. Tim, is that something that you think eventually will happen?
I do. And I think it's been a conversation that I've had rooted in my work to try and legalize cannabis in the legislature in New Hampshire. We're actually putting that kind of information into the legislation, that employees that are going to be interfacing with the public, growers or tenders, would need to have some type of educational effort, some type of certification. I know that the work that we're doing at Castleton, we've actually been in consultation with our Cannabis Control Board and our Agency for Commerce and Community Development, our Economic Development Office, in helping them train social equity applicants, because they're probably not folks who are normally have a lot of business schooling or a lot of business background. So it makes it help be a more viable and successful business if you can, I'll say, require some type of training, because then it makes the applicant be a more success. And the last thing a state wants to do is give out a bunch of applications to business owners and have them fail. So if they sort of force them to, I think what's really interesting, and I'm glad it's Rob that you have me on the show with, is that I think states are really seeing this as a value, because it helps keep young people in the state where they grew up, because they see it as an interesting industry that's growing. It's a state college that's a little more affordable for people to come to. And I think state universities also see the value of the industry, because their state government is saying, wait, this is a good revenue generator for our state. So let's work with our colleges to train our employees so it's successful. And the more successful businesses they are, the more tax revenue the state Office of Revenue gets. So I think it's a trend that you'll see, and we'll maybe get away from the specialty colleges and have this be a base curriculum that state colleges do utilize. And one aspect that you were referencing, and I think, and when Rob was talking about, how Stockton runs its program, we're smaller in our state colleges in Vermont, Rob. And so the idea that Castleton has the program, Vermont Tech is our sort of agriculture and science university. They teach a growing class. At NVU, the two campuses I teach at, we're more business and applied, sciences. So the state has realized that Vermont State University can utilize their different campuses, intellectual capital of professors, and offer the program to multiple campuses instead of one. So yes, we are sort of behind you in the race, but it's something that we're doing a little differently because we're small. We're a little more nimble. So I do agree, Jimmy, that the future of it is professionalizing bud tenders, growers, business owners, so that it does make it a more successful business, because states are relying on that new revenue. They don't want to raise sales taxes or income taxes or property taxes. If they can create new revenue from the cannabis industry, they want to.
Is there any way we can get our elected officials required to take some of these courses so they learn? Rob, you could comment on that. Go ahead. Tim, you are elected officials, right?
I'm always happy to.
I'm endorsing that
with anybody from municipalities who have questions. We're happy to provide that education to them. I did want to mention, Tim and Jimmy, that New Jersey actually is one of the first states that does mandate a required class for a required training for someone going in the cannabis industry. They haven't given their requirements on how they're going to approve the course yet, but it should be coming soon. But essentially, they outlined 8 points that everybody has to know in order to get their badge and along with their background check. So they have to know history of prohibition. They have to know how cannabis works medically. They have to know risks and contraindications. They have to know about how the labeling has to work. They have to know about advertising restrictions. So there's a decent amount to it, and they'll get a certificate after they go through it. But that's going to mean that everybody who works in cannabis in New Jersey will at least have that little baseline of cannabis knowledge. And obviously, our Community Harvest, my private education company, we're on that. So we've created the curriculum. I'm just waiting for them to review it and give me the stamp so I can run.
So I'm hoping that part of that curriculum is Raphael Mechoulam.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. Tim, do you know Raphael Mechoulam? Tim, I don't know if he's still with us or not. He's a great stone face right now. Rob, he's the Israeli.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Raphael Mechoulam.
I'm here.
Do you know who he is?
I do not. I do not, Jimmy. Educate me.
I am going to educate. 1964 Israeli researcher discovered THC and named it. And there's actually a little movement. And our buddy Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net's the one who's behind a lot of this, is to get him a Nobel Peace Prize, because he really is part of history. And I think we all know that small little independent state in the middle of Europe and Asia, let's just leave it right there, does its best work with research. And it's an amazing thing. And I'm so happy that we have a correspondent now from that nation that will keep us enlightened about what goes on there. One of the things, guys, that has been a topic of conversation on this show, and also with people that I run into and want to know about, is the fact that we have to figure out a way to explain to people that this is a plant medicine, not a drug. To me, when you think of drugs, I think of laboratories. I think of labs, something that's artificially created in a lab, as opposed to something that's grown in the ground. And it sounds like it's a simple thing to understand, but we all know for 80 years, it's been vilified as a drug. It's on the Controlled Substances Act as a Schedule I drug. Will we ever get to the point where it will be accepted as a plant medicine? Bob?
Although we should back up for 1 second, because did you know that 1/4 of all pharmaceuticals are plant-based? Are plant-based botanicals. And actually, that's how pharmaceuticals pretty much started. They started with aspirin, and aspirin was created or synthesized from willow bark.
There you go. See,
And
I love
so, and so
learning
that's how you created medicine. So essentially, if somebody's taking 4 medications, there is a very good chance that one of those is plant-based. Cannabis is just a plant-based medicine. That's all. So I actually don't mind that it's called medicine or a drug, because it does have very good company. There's morphine that comes from poppies, for example. So there's a rich history of botanicals that are used for medicine. I think the bigger part is if you can get the message out about CBD and how it works, and that doesn't get people high, that's a good place to start the conversation. Also, starting the conversation by talking about hemp, and then explaining why it was prohibited in the first place. I think that all those things kind of start opening hearts and minds a little bit. And then also, unfortunately, I think all of us know somebody who's had cancer. And a lot of people, when they go through, especially chemotherapy, they do use cannabis for nausea and help with the vomiting, and then also to help stimulate their appetite and for pain relief. So I think if you're talking, depending on who the audience is, I think you can find ways in, and I think you can find ways to talk to their hearts and mind, depending on what's of interest to them.
Since we have a politician with us, Tim, as we follow what goes on in Washington, D.C. and get more and more frustrated, okay? One of the things that Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey continues to harp on is the expungement of the records of the people that are behind bars for cannabis possession, nonviolent crimes. Isn't this another opportunity for the economy to create a workforce development opportunity for these people that come out of the prison system, get their records expunged, and go into some kind of a workforce development opportunity in the cannabis space, teaching them about the plant that they were incarcerated for carrying a couple of joints and have been in jail for years? What do you think? Workforce development, Tim?
You're right on target, Jimmy. There's actually 3 economic development opportunities for folks that have been what I would call restorative justice candidates, folks that have gone to jail for possession or for growing, right? So first of all, if they were a grower and they were growing it illegally and now it's legal, they're actually probably an expert. So they'll be a successful business owner. So if you can create expungement that allows them to come out either with some training or with some guidance and get into the industry, right? You're creating you're reducing recidivism. I just butchered that word, right? You're making more opportunity for people to create a legitimate career than to go back to a life of crime. I think the second thing that you're doing is you're limiting or lowering the impact of the negativity of the prison system, which we sort of turned into an industry in its own here in the United States, which is not a good thing. We shouldn't be having more prisons than schools. We should be building, more colleges and.
Yes, we should be building more colleges, and you dropped out. We don't need any more colleges in the New Jersey area, though, right, Rob? You get enough of them down there, right?
And
well, I don't know. New Jersey is the biggest exporter of college students, so.
Yeah. Tim, we lost your conversation again in the Wi-Fi world. So look, I'm up against the clock. I want to thank Tim Egan for making this effort. And by the way, he's come to the studio before. There, he's back. I so appreciate your passion for this in a position that you're in. And, New Hampshire, as we all know, is the only New England state that is not got adult use. Sorry, I had to. I know. I'm sorry. Okay, that it's a reality. And I think it's great that I actually know somebody who's trying to change that in a grassroots effort. So, as you know, you're always welcome on this show.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I apologize for my crappy internet here today. That's also one of my aspects of being a state rep, is trying to improve broadband in New Hampshire so that this doesn't happen when you're trying to have a business meeting.
That's right.
The last thing I wanted to mention about public safety was, if we can actually reduce the efforts of public safety officials to waste their time in sort of the bookkeeping of cannabis industry, they can spend their time on more important things like violent crime and keeping assault weapons off, or safeguarding our children from evildoers. Those are 3 economic development opportunities that legal cannabis can bring outside of the business side of it. how it can actually help law enforcement do a better job and be more focused. And that's something that we talk a lot about in the legislature as well. Try to make sure that we engage our law enforcement officials to know there's actually a positive side of legalization. They worry, oh, what are we going to do about, operating under the influence, or can kids get access to it? And I said, look, kids can get access to it now in New Hampshire. I've talked with teenagers. I talked to my own daughter and I said, if you want to get cannabis, can you? She goes, Dad, I can text somebody and it could be in my mailbox in 30 minutes. So I say to police officers, don't we want to regulate it? Don't we want to make sure somebody has an ID that they're above age, who are responsible enough to get it? Don't we want to test it so it doesn't have fentanyl or other chemicals in it? Don't we want to manage its potency? If we regulate it,
that's the whole point of legalization or decriminalization. And let's add research and study the darn stuff too. The stuff that's actually being sold in dispensaries as opposed to in a freezer at the University of Mississippi for 40 years or 30 years, Hey, guys, I do have two other guests coming on for the next half hour. Tim, thank you for hanging in there and keep trying. Appreciate it. Rob, you're allowed to stay because your Wi-Fi is solid. So if you want to stay,
I gotta go.
You gotta go, Tim. But Rob, if you want to stay, I've got really a guy that we have a lot of respect for and we really like. He's a president and an adjunct professor at Clark University teaching entrepreneurship and in the cannabis.
I bet his name is Ulysses.
How do you know Ulysses Youngblood?
He and I are friends. He actually did a video for my social justice class. He speaks in my class all the time.
He's great.
I give him connections. I like working with Ulysses.
Well, he'll be here. You might as well hang out and say hello. And I don't know if either of you guys, I have never met or talked to anybody from the state of Alaska. Okay. And this guy, Gary Burton, not with the animals. Gary Burton is a grower. He has a farmer's market in Alaska. And he happened to reach out to me today. And I'm like, what are you doing at 5 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time? And he goes, I could come on. So he's on. So we're going to take a break. Tim, you're going into the penalty box, but we love you. Okay.
Can I say two things before I head out? One, Rob, I'm going to reach out to you online and LinkedIn because I'd love to be able to interconnect, state college to state college professor, because I think we should be doing that, especially in the East Coast. And Jimmy, this fall, there'll be 2 new pieces of legislation coming out that I'm going to be sponsoring in New Hampshire. So I ask your viewers that are in New Hampshire to pay attention and get engaged. And if you want to contact me, you can find me on the New Hampshire General Court site. But I'm going to ask folks to reach out to their legislators, to say, we want you to vote this forward. So I really appreciate Pro Cannabis Media giving educators and innovators a forum, because this is a piece of our economic future, especially for state colleges who look for their states to give them more revenue. And if it can come from legalized cannabis, that's a benefit for everybody. So I really do appreciate the time today. Rob, it was a pleasure being on the show with you.
Thank you, Tim. And let's take our break and come back for the big final half hour of Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon.
With the Reg CF offering that we're doing, we have basically pretty much gone through all the steps you need to do when you're doing an IPO. Now, we're not sold on the public markets. Which is still considered private equity, but you basically buy shares we use the Start Engine platform, and now anybody can go and buy shares. When Facebook first launched, the banks were buying shares at $5 and $10. It IPO'd at $20. I put in a buy offer as just a random Joe retail customer. I put in a buy order the night before. Computers execute instantaneously, right? I think my buy went in at like $34 by computer execution by the time it opened, while the banks got to buy it all at $5 and $10. Well, this allows you and me to be able to buy into these pre-IPO companies at favorable rates.
This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. Hi, everyone. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and you're probably wondering, what am I doing on a growing show? After all, I'm a convicted plant killer. That's why I surround myself with these beautiful plastic babies. But now I have found the secret to all those people out there who just don't want to deal with growing a plant indoors or outdoors. You just don't have enough confidence. Hey, check out greengoddesssupply.com. That's where you'll find the armoire system. Basically, it's growing for dummies like me. Check it out. The armoire at greengoddesssupply.com. All right, welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and every half hour we have to remind you again to like, share, and subscribe, not just to this show, but all the programs that we put out here at Pro Cannabis Media. And of course, the one that I'm really most proud of is this news show called Weed Talk News that follows this live stream. And, again, please stay tuned for that. And, one of the things that I'm proud of too, that I'm learning, you really don't have to watch our shows. Okay. You really can just put it on, leave it in the background and listen to it, because we live stream 24/7 news, talk, business information, policy questions, interviews. And if you really want an education about the cannabis industry, you can learn a lot just by listening to some of the interviews that we've done. And they're not all done by me. Okay. There's plenty of other hosts on these programs that you'll learn from. And we're doing great with the Calling All Growers show. And Rob, you and I should talk about that just to get you on at some point, because I'd love to introduce you to Liz Grow, who is the host of that show. And that is her real name. Do you know Liz? You know,
I don't know Liz. I have heard one of her shows though, and she does do a good job. She has a lot of energy and certainly a ton of knowledge.
And it, it's had over 1,000 interviews with growers in her grow house media work. So, but let's bring in the first guy I've ever talked to from the great state of Alaska. His name is Gary Burton, and he is the director of the American Made Farmers Market. And for some reason, he wanted to connect with me. And a lot of people out there do not like to do that, Gary. So I really appreciate the fact that we followed up and you reached out. Thank you so much for coming on today's show.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, walk us through the legalities. We have adult use in Alaska?
Yes, we have adult use. And we have legalized and medical, but we don't really have a medical market whatsoever.
Because what? I get it. If all the adults are using it for medicinal purposes and they're buying it at the adult use dispensary, it's okay. That's usually what happens, right? Anyway. Tell us about a little of the history, because I think when the first time we talked about that strain that ends with, rhymes with duck, Alaskan thunder duck. Okay. Tell us about the history of cannabis in Alaska. Go ahead. Your show.
So I was told because originally there's a couple of different ideas around that strain. One, that it was a strain, and then I have recently been corrected that it was not necessarily a strain, but a simple growing style that was established in that part of Alaska. So some interesting stories in that, but yes. So on the strain side of the story, it was originally a strain that the genetics were lost. And supposedly there was a jar of seeds that was found, and some of the original genetics were able to be scrounged out of that jar of seeds. And so there's rumor that that genetic could still be alive. But then at the same time, I've also been told that the closest thing to it is now been referred to more as an Alaska thunder duck, if you will. And so there's a lot of speculation surrounding that one. Yeah. And a lot of pride with that plant.
So let me ask you a question. I know I was a history major, American studies 30, 40 years ago. The indigenous people of Alaska, are they getting a break? Are they getting opportunities to build a business legally around cannabis like some of the other indigenous tribes and reservations that are out there?
To my knowledge, I haven't heard of a whole lot of anything like that. Predominantly the natives that because I lived in the bush, Alaska for 6.5 years before I moved to the Anchorage area. And so the energy costs are just really high out there. So to do an indoor grow would be just an astronomical price to the public.
Right. And there's not a lot of solar power in Alaska, am I right? Except for the summertime when the sun never goes down, right?
Yeah, we just finished summer in Alaska.
Yeah. but we laugh, but you've got a virtual background behind you of the Northern Lights. And how many times you lived in the bush, Gary? How many times have you seen and experienced that?
Quite a few, more than I could count. I've been here for 13 years. So yeah, you see them every year.
And do you marvel at it every time you see it, or it's like, it's like in Maine, lobster again for dinner? I mean, it's part of the culture, right?
It's Christmas every time you get to see it. Just like when you see a rainbow, you still smile. It's the same thing with the Northern Lights.
I like it. Tell us about what you do with your American-made farmers market. How does that work? And give me a little background on that.
Sure. So it's a online sourcing platform for retailers and cultivators and producers to connect and move product. But recently we have added a twist to it. So there's been a lot of speculation regarding numbers coming out of the labs and, why did my numbers drop 6 points on this crop? I didn't do anything different. Why did the entire state drop 10 points? Because the labs had to calculate or recalibrate their machines. So we've had some issues with that. So we decided to come up with a way to evaluate cannabis on a quality scale and then put a numeric value to it. So we recently released that, and that's been a whole lot of fun. And I've just relaunched a new review site to host all the data.
What's the name of the site? Come on, you got to be a promoter.
Sure. So it's a-mfmreviews.com is our review site, and it's usable by everybody. And we just started attaching QR codes so we can put it in the stores as well. So you can check it out straight from the store whenever you're shopping to get the review on what people think.
So,
Jimmy, is it okay if I ask Gary a follow-up question on that?
In fact, Gary, I was about to tell you, Rob, I know you have a question for Gary. Go ahead.
Of course, I do. So, Gary, in coming up with this sort of quality matrix you're talking about, our quality scale, are you doing that in part to try to train consumers just not to ask for the highest THC and how to take into account things like terpenes, or what sort of elements do you give them to look at, and what makes like a really good, what would be a good grade?
Sure. So we do all of our reviews double blind. So they have no idea what they're getting or who it's from. So no bias. And then we use THC That way it's still in your mind, except that it stands for taste, high, and characteristics. So that way you can figure out how strong the taste is going to be, how strong the smell is going to be, and how beautiful that plant is in the taste score. Then in your high score is, well, how long is it going to last and how high are you going to get? And then the characteristics are, what does the average person feel from this product? That way, you know, are you happy? Are you sleepy? Are you hungry? And we came up with 10 emojis to help describe the effects, just to make it easy to remember. But it happened because of the high turnover that happens often in bud tenders and in cannabis stores. If you walk in and you happen to catch the guy on his first day, he doesn't have a clue what's on the shelf. So asking his opinion, if you're a new person to that store, is basically worthless. So he's just going to tell you whatever he's guessing. Or what if he doesn't like to do dabs, or what if he doesn't like to do edibles? So then you run into a risk of not being able to get the information you need. That's why we created the quality score. So that way, no matter who you are or who's behind the counter, you'll still get the same great service.
Yeah, I've discovered a new product that's you know, microdosing is becoming a new thing now, because there's so many people that are new to it. They don't know how much they should take, and actually getting a measured dose is still a challenge. And although guys, I do remember one hit weed, two hit weed. Okay, I totally remember that. All right, that doesn't fly in 2022 now. Okay, let's just face it. Right. First of all, Dennis said he's had Alaska Thunder Duck in our chat room. Okay, and lived to tell the story. All right. How much education goes on in Alaska? Because we do always want to go back to that, because we do think everybody in this industry who's in it has an obligation to educate any of the people that we come in contact with, because that stigma is out there. We have to deal with it every day. What do you have any universities that teach the growing of cannabis?
Oh, not that I'm aware of. But I definitely could see that happening, as we do have some classes that touch on horticulture and things here. So eventually, yeah, and I could even see it moving into some of the business classes here before long, if we can get a legalization bill.
And Jimmy, I do know there is a scientist at University of Alaska Fairbanks, and she does teach the chemistry of cannabis.
Oh, there you go.
Because when I put together a huge convening of cannabis professors across the country, so I always scour like who's teaching what, who's doing what, and then I just call them. So I had a conversation with her, and she was actually one of the new ones. She probably started her class like about 4 years ago. So yeah, I know there's at least one class there.
And I got to tell you, chemistry of cannabis. Whoever thought that would be a course in a college? I mean, it boggles my mind in so many ways. Gary, what's the one issue as someone who's a citizen of Alaska that you'd like to see changed in your state in regards to the industry up there?
We need to put the tax burden on the end user and give help to the farms, and because they're the ones that are really struggling. And it's not just in Alaska, it's nationwide. The pinch is on the farmer, and it really should just be placed on the consumer.
Yeah. I tell you, we're running, I don't know if we've run one of these spots today or not. Green Spoon Martyr is in a law firm in Denver, and they've got tax experts and cannabis experts. They got together and they did some research, and sure enough, they found a way to defer your income tax as a farmer for 30 years, and it's legal to do. And you know, we're trying to spread the word about their initiative. And again, anytime I hear how farmers are struggling, whether they're growing cannabis or tomatoes or whatever they're growing, corn, I don't care. It is a really tough way of life. And I have the utmost respect for the people that get up at 4 a.m. before the sun even comes up just to get their crops and their animals ready for the day, because as a human, you actually could help them out a little bit. So I don't know where I was going with that thought, but I definitely wanted to give a plug to our friends at Green Spoon Martyr.
The other thing, Jimmy, that would help in terms of the taxes and the burden is to get rid of 280E to start with. Give cannabis businesses normal business deductions like any other cannabis business. I mean, if the federal government will take their taxes, let them have the deductions that are normal and customary. That's one. And then the second thing is access to banking. Even if you can get access to banking, it's usually a state-based bank, a credit union, and even then they still kill you with fees. So I think even having those two things, and then you're right, Gary, putting the tax burden on the end user, but trying to keep it reasonable too. I mean, if you're trying to get rid of the legacy or underground market, you cannot go crazy with taxes, as we've seen in California. But if we can take care of 280E, get some banking going, put in some reasonable tax policy, I think we could be much further along than we are now.
Yeah. You know what's going on in Washington, D.C., right? I mean, even the climate change bill that did pass by one vote. Thank you, Vice President Harris, for that. I just don't get it. It's like the politicians really are just concerned about getting reelected and taking care of the people that support their election efforts. Right? These are the lobbyists that want these guys in office so that money corrupts and power is dangerous. And we have to do something about our U.S. Senate right now, because it doesn't look like America. The people that are representing Americans don't look like Americans. They look like old white guys. Okay. And I'm sorry, I say it a lot, but I'm like, this has to change. And I hope it changes. I didn't think I'd see weed legal in my lifetime. So can we just kind of move forward on term limits or figure out a way to shake it up a little bit in Washington, D.C. and actually start governing rather than making sure you get reelected? All right. That was my rant for the day.
Well, I personally would love to see national decriminalization to start with. That seems like an easy lift. That seems like something Biden should have done a long time ago. And ironically, at first, when I kept seeing all this legislation, I was so frustrated it wasn't passing through. But at the same time, what's happened is it's given states more time to develop their own markets. And that's been a huge advantage. So each state has gotten to be a laboratory for what we're going to do with taxes, with our social equity applicants, with our license categories. And we've seen other states do it. So we're borrowing best practices. So weirdly, while they're over there waiting on all these, it gets through the House and then nothing ever happens again, over time and time again. Meanwhile, a lot of us are doing a lot of hard work on the state level to make sure that once it does pass, that we'll have a solid business. So for me personally, I'm kind of glad they're still fooling around, and while they're doing that, we're going to keep making headway.
And it lends itself to talk shows. Okay. I'm not going to say it doesn't, and everybody knows which side I lean to. I get it, but I definitely understand the idea of fiscal conservatism. So I lean a little libertarian on that side. But here's the problem: pointing fingers and labels. Everybody wants to point a finger and label. You're a conservative, you're a liberal, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. No, we're forgetting that this country was built on our differences and getting along with each other because we can share free speech with each other. But everybody has to have an agenda now. And everybody's emotions are so raw that, now that the pandemic has eased, this is why you're seeing all these crazy things happen in our society, is that they're, the inmates are out of the asylum and they're running around doing bad things. And you still can't get a safe banking bill passed in the U.S. Senate. And it passed the House 7 times. Anyway, I just want to, Rob, I want to go back to you and talk a little bit about New Jersey. There's been a few issues down there. And actually, I'm not going to just throw New Jersey onto this. Gary, I'm going to mention it to you too. I'd like to know, first of all, what you think of the role that the multi-state operator has played in the beginning of this industry, and what role it might have moving forward. And I know, Rob, in New Jersey, they were the ones that were controlling the medical world, right? And the medical program there. And they were the first ones to get the licenses. A lot of people think everything is being skewed towards the MSOs. What's your feeling about that? And what role do you think they play in our world?
Well, in New Jersey, we started with such a small medical market, and you're right that it was predominantly dominated by MSOs. And even the few independents, the 2 independents we had, well, we had 3. So 2 of the 3 independents have been purchased by MSOs since they started. So the short answer is, of the companies that are participating in the cannabis industry in New Jersey, 95% of them are MSOs. They do try to be good citizens. They do have social impact plans. They do try to work with internships, but they have such a dominant market share and such a lead on anyone else who's trying to get in there right now that it'll be interesting to see how we can ever kind of catch up with that. So my hope is that they'll be either required, incentivized to help a lot of the small operators, to provide mentorship, to maybe even use social equity applicants for things like delivery services or ancillary services that they may not want to get in on their own. So my hope is that we can work together and that they will give as much opportunity to the small folks as possible. And I'm just waiting and hoping that the small operators can really get up and running and give some competition to these big MSOs.
Well, I will say this, that the craft growers grow better weed than the MSOs do. Look, Gary's going, yes, they do.
Yep.
So talk to me about the MSO scene in Alaska. Is it there?
No, it's not here. There is one MSO that came up through the Hemp, if you will, offering D9 that way. But there's no one has come up and established a grow or anything like that. But because of what we have seen in the lower 48, we are definitely feeling the pinch and the fear every time that a legalization bill is mentioned, because like I was talking about, the high cost to produce, while Alaska craft cannabis is some of the best cannabis you'll find, growing it outdoors is really cheap compared to our energy prices.
There you go. That's interesting. So again, I got to ask, how long is the grow season in Alaska, Gary?
Well, like I said, it's August 12th and our summer's already over. It's 56 degrees and raining. 3 days ago, it was 45. So, and there's snow in Denali for 3 days now. Snow on the mountains. Winter's coming.
Well, Maine used to be July and winter. That's how they describe their weather up there. So, is the majority of the grow then inside? They're paying the electric bills or outside?
99.6% of the entire market is grown indoors.
Indoors. Yeah.
Yes.
And do you have any idea the percentage of the electric grid is taken up by indoor grows by any chance? Because I know in Massachusetts, it's 10% of the electric grid for the state.
That would be an interesting thing to look at, because we have the highest per capita for dispensaries of any state.
Really?
Yes. Yep. We have more dispensaries than places do Starbucks. It's kind of funny is it's easier to find weed than it is to find coffee.
Well, coffee's more addictive. Okay. I think anybody who understands, right? 91% of Americans have coffee every day. Okay. But caffeine's, not a Schedule I drug.
Right.
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 All right. Hey guys, I really appreciate you taking the time. Gary, it was great to meet you. I have an opportunity for you that I will talk to you about off air, because I don't want to put any pressure on you in a live situation. If people want to find out about your THC website, give it a plug again and let people know a little bit about if they're interested in finding out more about the American-made farmers market.
Sure. So our main website is a-mfm.com. That is our sourcing platform. And then if you are interested in just looking and seeing what Alaska cannabis is like, even if you're not from here, you can look and see some of the reviews and the pictures and things that we have taken on our review site, a-mfmreviews.com.
Yeah. weed porn. Is that pretty much what we're looking at? Beautiful,
Absolutely.
beautiful buds, right? Rob, give us a plug for Stockton and how people can find you with our community harvest effort.
Sure. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I do put a lot of our events there. So it's best to get Rob Mejia at LinkedIn. And then my website is ourcommunityharvest.com.
There you go. Rob Mejia from Stockton, Gary Burton from Alaska. Thank you so much for joining us on a abbreviated edition of Green Rush Live, because I'm really tired. I'll be perfectly honest. I've had a long week. Okay. And I've got a massage waiting for me in a little while. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So
Nice.
we're going to say goodbye and remind people that are watching to stay tuned. The news is coming up next with Elena Pinto. We'll see you next time on Green Rush Live. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
With the Reg CF offering that we're doing, we have basically pretty much gone through all the steps you need to do when you're doing an IPO. Now, we're not sold on the public markets, which is still considered private equity, but you basically buy shares we use the Start Engine platform, and now anybody can go and buy shares. When Facebook first launched, the banks were buying shares at $5 and $10. It IPO'd at 20. I put in a buy offer as just a random Joe retail customer. I put in a buy order the night before. Computers execute instantaneously, right? I think my buy went in at like $34 by computer execution by the time it opened, while the banks got to buy it all at $5 and $10. Well, this allows you and me to be able to buy into these pre-IPO companies at favorable rates.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, we check in on the nation's capital, where more groups continue to try to influence federal reform. Now, it's the U.S. Hemp Roundtable checking in. Plus, Show Me Missouri. That state signs up enough people to get adult use on the ballot in the fall. Brandon Jones has that story. Another American is detained in Russia. Claudia Post has details. Coast to Coast, cannabis news, and a look at the international scene from Canada to Israel on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next. This media original content is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, CPA services for the cannabis industry, and by stylighting.shop. Log on today to get your grow kit.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media, and welcome to Weed Talk News. While Congress starts to work out the kinks of federal cannabis reform on Capitol Hill, the rest of the country is showing its solidarity with the movement. Members of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable have sent a letter to congressional leaders in support of the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. The group says it applauds the bill's introduction, but is also recommending changes to provisions within the legislation that would undermine the hemp industry. The other continued effort on the Hill is the Safe Banking Act, and some advocates are beginning to feel hopeful it'll pass. However, members of the Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition say the bill is not a safe bet to achieve fair and equitable access to financial services for those in the cannabis industry. Next week, the group will host a panel analysis of the Safe Banking Act, including recommendations to improve fair access to cannabis banking. Meanwhile, more states are confirming they are looking to go green. Florida-born country music singers, the Bellamy Brothers, have partnered with Trulieve to launch a statewide initiative called Smart and Safe Florida and the Bellamy Brothers. They hope to put the issue on the ballot as a constitutional amendment in 2024. And in the heart of the country, Missouri's Secretary of State confirmed this week activists have turned in enough ballot petitions to place a cannabis reform measure before voters. That means an initiative to legalize adult use cannabis will appear on the state's November ballot. Brandon Jones kicks off our state-to-state roundup with the latest from Missouri.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yes, it happened. In November, adult use recreational cannabis will be on the ballot here in Missouri. So it was a little bit of pushback. We didn't know if the signatures were going to be met. There was a lot of talk about some of the districts didn't have enough signatures, but the petition actually did get passed and put on the ballot by the Secretary of State. So in November, Legal Mode 2022 will actually be on the ballot. There are some people now that is talking about whether is that the best initiative. Obviously, it's the first, so people are excited and might just vote just because it's available. I would obviously urge everyone to do some research, figure out exactly what the bill is going to propose, and make sure that you're a fan of everything that's on it. Also, we had a great event here last night, 810, the local sports radio AM station has celebrated 100 years. Lots of local sports stars hanging out, doing a lot of stuff for charity, silent auctions, lots of speakers, some really cool live music, and just a lot of the best people in the area from sports were there talking, having fun, just being all about the radio station here and supported. It was a lot of fun talking about the athletes, seeing their change. A lot of proponents of CBD. Tim Gronhard, former Chiefs player, is a big proponent for CBD and hemp. He works with American Shaman here in Kansas City. Christian Okoye, the Nigerian Nightmare, was there. Great guy, also a supporter of Plants Over Pills. Tyrod Taylor and Sharon Collins, former KU basketball players, along with Coach Bill Self. A lot of the KU players were there as well, too. But they were obviously supporting of Plants Over Pills. It was great to see just the attitude and the people changing. So here in Missouri, again, November, the ballot for adult use legal mode 22 will be on the ballot. Make sure you do some research and get out there and vote. Again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Have a great week, everybody.
The green rush in the Empire State is about to begin. New York cannabis regulators have just announced they will officially begin accepting applications for the state's first adult use retailer licenses in just 2 weeks. And the first licenses will be reserved for people impacted by the drug war. Those applications can start rolling in on August 25th. There are more licenses going out in the Green Mountain State too. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board awarded a handful more licenses to businesses this week and hosted roundtable discussions with the public about the state's current programs. Jessie Lynn Dolan has the details in this week's Vermont Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. This week, there were 2 medical cannabis roundtable talks organized by the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. The purpose of these events was to get feedback from the public on medical use cannabis program. Both dispensary representatives, patients, and caregivers spoke up about the much needed changes in the program. With plenty of public comment to fill the allotted comment times, the Cannabis Control Board recognizes the need for more focus on patients. When the Vermont Cannabis Control Board wasn't listening to public comments and feedback, they were busy awarding 19 more cultivation licenses this week, with nearly 150 licenses in total so far. On August 21st, Moksha's Elevated Experience will be hosting at a yet-to-be-disclosed location, Elevated Under the Stars. It will be an infused family-style Italian meal and campout with a heady gift bag and dab connoisseur services. Visit Moksha Experience on Instagram for more info. Also on the 20th, a free-to-attend farmers market will be held in Ferrisburg for consumers to learn about products from local growers and makers. Of course, both events are 21 plus. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse and Ganjier, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
Lawmakers in Massachusetts have given the green light to the idea for cannabis consumption lounges and cafes across the state. But while legislation has passed, it seems to be taking a while to get things up and running. Weed Talk News producer Tori Chamberlain explains why in this week's Bay State Report.
Hey guys, here's the Bay State Report for this week. Massachusetts lawmakers passed that legislation for cannabis lounges back in July, but it's been kind of stalled ever since, and here's why. When legalization passed back in 2016, the legislation required that cities and towns ask their residents whether or not to allow these sites, and their answer could then maybe trigger a petition. The problem is, except for just a few cities, there are no provisions in the state about initiative petitions at the municipal level. So there's really no way for people to push those petitions forward in any meaningful way. But the amendments passed in July address all of this, and the State Cannabis Control Commission says it's now working to review the law and get all the necessary components into place to start issuing those licenses for lounges. In other business news, MariMed has announced its Nature's Heritage brand of craft flower and concentrates will be a presenting sponsor of the Cultivators Cup, which is one of the largest festivals and awards competitions in Massachusetts. And also, a few weeks ago, we took you to AIR in Boston's Back Bay. The company is expanding its footprint here in the Bay State with a new medical and adult use dispensary now open in Watertown and a new cultivation facility getting ready to open in Milford. And I will actually be touring that facility next week to give you guys an inside look. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But that's the Bay State Report for this week. I'm Tori Chamberlain for Pro Cannabis Media.
A product problem plaguing a popular edible company. Chiba Chews has temporarily removed its new rosin-infused gummy line called Melts from Colorado dispensaries following a mold scare. There's been no official recall announcement because Chiba Chews doesn't believe any affected products reach consumers, but the company has removed all Melts lines from Colorado shelves for the time being and hopes to have them back by September. Meanwhile, it's earnings season for cannabis companies. Deborah Borchardt takes a look at what's happening in this week's Green Market Report.
I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is the business update for We Talk News. Earnings season is underway, and we had some big names deliver their numbers this week. One of the biggest was Trulieve, who reported revenues rose 49% to $320 million in the quarter. Now, while that sounds great, the company threw some cold water on its guidance, citing inflation. Having said that, Trulieve still plans on selling over $1 billion of cannabis for the year. Weedmaps also reported that their revenue increased 24% to $58.3 million. But here again, the company cautioned that in its outlook, it expects total revenue to be flat to down and in the mid-single-digit percentage area. Now, on a positive note, Curaleaf was excited to report that New Jersey was a home run for the company. It reported revenue of approximately $338 million and noted that the Garden State was a big part of its success in growing those sales. Now, over 25 companies reported earnings this week. So if you need more detail on any of them, head over to the Green Market Report. And this has been your business update. And I'm Deborah Borchardt.
Being a cannabis patient in Washington, D.C. just got easier. Washington, D.C.'s mayor tweeted this week to let residents know they can now self-certify for the district's medical cannabis program via an online application form. And get this, program fees are waived for new and renewal patients and caregivers for the next week. Vote Pro podcast has more from the nation's capital this week, but at the same time, regulators also say they're going to crack down on gifting cannabis. Here he is with more from the nation's capital.
Hi, this is Phil Adams from Vote Pro podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC report. The National Institutes of Health posted a request for information this week aimed at identifying barriers to cannabis and cannabinoid research. Citing the need for better understanding the plant's clinical uses and therapeutic potential, NIH is seeking input from the research community. In particular, the agency wants information regarding such impediments to research as the status of cannabis as a Schedule I drug and the limited availability of cannabis for clinical trial. Interested parties have until October 15th to respond to the RFI. Regulators in the District of Columbia are set to begin cracking down on cannabis gifting next month. The action is expected to have a significant impact on DC's thriving gray market. The practice has been prevalent among certain retailers in the district since 2014, when it became legal to possess and use cannabis, but not to buy and sell it. Gifting operators typically raise the price of certain mainstream products, such as t-shirts and other items, then offer cannabis products free with the purchase. Licensed medical marijuana dispensaries in D.C. claim these operators are engaging in unfair and illegal competition. A joint cannabis task force created under the district's Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration warns that businesses engaging in cannabis gifting may be subject to fines or other enforcement actions. Elections officials in Maryland have finalized the language for cannabis legalization referendum to appear on the ballot in November as question 4. The question before the voters is, quote, "Do you favor the legalization of the use of cannabis by an individual who is at least 21 years of age on or after July 1st, 2023 in the state of Maryland?" Last April, the Maryland General Assembly approved a measure to put the legalization question on the ballot as a constitutional amendment. The legislature also passed a complementary bill to establish an implementation framework should Maryland voters approve question 4. It provides for the use, distribution, possession, regulation, and taxation of cannabis within the state. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
The prisoner battle in Russia over Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan continues. But now one U.S. senator is telling the White House there's another U.S. citizen who deserves to be designated as wrongfully detained. Claudia Post has that story and much more in this week's Pennsylvania Report.
I'm Claudia Post for Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State reporting for Weed Talk News. A spokesperson for Pennsylvania Republican Senate candidate Mehmet Oz sent a statement accusing Democratic opponent John Fetterman, who is currently the lieutenant governor, of being the nation's most prominent trust fund advocate of marijuana legalization. Now, what exactly does that mean? I don't understand. But that, of course, is Dr. Oz. We don't understand him, and we don't understand why he's here. Last week, I reported on Mark Fogel, the Pennsylvania school teacher who was serving a prison sentence in Russia for possessing medical cannabis. This week, Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania said the Biden administration should give a wrongfully detained determination to Fogel because he has been a dedicated teacher for decades, teaching the children of diplomats. Of course, I think all of that is theater, holding these people. For what reason? Of course, they probably want us to release some bandito from our prisons, but that's politics. Pennsylvania medical cannabis grower and processor Calypso Enterprise is calling on the state to provide equitable relief for independent marijuana companies after it laid off 55 workers at its facility in Erie. It was a very big company. The layoffs amount to nearly 75% of the company's staff. Calypso's layoffs come only weeks after another Pennsylvania grower, Hanging Gardens, laid off dozens of workers and reduced others' hours. I guess my question is, why is this happening when we have sometimes shortages at the dispensaries? I don't know. I want to look into that and find out why that's happening. And I will report back next week about it. So that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not right here in the Keystone State. So from Weed Talk News, have a fabulous week.
Employee efforts to unionize seem to be plaguing corporations everywhere, from Starbucks to Trader Joe's, and cannabis is no exception. In fact, some former dispensary employees in Seattle, Washington, claimed their store was shut down over their interest in unionizing. Josh Kincaid has that story and more from Washington State.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Former Seattle cannabis dispensary employees claim that the owner closed the store to avoid unionizing. Labor laws protect unionized employees from many different forms of retaliation, including having shifts cut or hours reduced. One thing it doesn't protect against is a business owner simply taking their ball and going home. And that's exactly what former employees at Ponder, a recently closed Seattle cannabis shop, alleged that the owners did. Ponder workers filed to form a union in July of 2021, winning recognition via unanimous election on September 14th of the same year, but the store was closed less than 4 months later. Yet cannabis businesses cannot be closed for more than 30 days without forfeiting its license, suggesting that Ponder might have been in violation. But just recently, Forbidden Cannabis Club, a local chain of cannabis stores, launched an Instagram page for a new Seattle location with the same address as Ponder. So while it's impossible to determine whether closing the store was a union-busting move on the part of the owner, it seems clear that he wanted to sell or close the store. This story starts to get a little murky after the union was first formed when the owner started talking about wanting to close the store. The owner began to reduce the hours and duties of 5 employees who started the union. He later fired 3 and mentioning the store's impending closure in their termination letter. And former employees still feel strongly that the owner needs to either bargain with his workers in good faith or give back his license. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Next week, you guys are going to find out more about the Washington cannabis scene, but with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Heads reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.
In the Great White North, parts of Canada are paying back veterans in a big way. Officials in Ottawa are reimbursing a record number of veterans for medical cannabis. New figures show the federal government shelled out more than $150 million last year to former service members, asking the government to pay for their cannabis. The Canadian feds are now on track to spend nearly $200 million for the same efforts. This is a great way to pay back people who have served the country and ensure them affordable access to plant medicine. So now let's check in with Debbie Facey for more on what's happening in Canada.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey from We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent for the Canadian Cannabis Joint of the Week. This week, what we had was in Alberta, due to the brazen robberies that have been going on, Alberta has decided to lift the laws when it came to having blackout vinyl that was going to be attracting the youth and under the age of 19. So with their windows vinyl lane changing, it's going to be something that's going to be great for not only their safety, but for also any sort of witnesses and any sort of police enforcement that may have to come in order to do any sort of enforcement. Also this week, which we had was a cyber breach, which more of a cyber hack, we should say. And it was more on our OCS. Our OCS in Ontario is a delivery service that is responsible for delivering to all of the legal retail cannabis stores. With that, which led to a halt in the deliveries, OCS has promised now to make sure that they have not only the precautions, but the safety also in hand to ensure that they do not have any sort of hiccups where there is such a breach or can a breach happen again in the future. What we also have just been able to find out due to our reports from Health Canada was that we had over 425 million grams of unsold cannabis destroyed last year. And when I mean destroyed, I mean as in put on fire and watched blaze. Ontario has seen and does realize that not only is that an unsustainable way of distributing or getting rid of product that has not been unsold, but it has also kind of shown a lot of numbers to a lot of these LPs that their products and the number of products that is being distributed at one point may be too much at one time, where they are in the end losing their profits and having to burn it like they did for 425 million grams of cannabis. I'm Debbie Facey for We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent, and that was our weekly joint of the week.
Israel has long been touted as the global leader in cannabis research, and now it looks like companies there are leading the way toward new techniques and innovations with cannabinoids. Danny Oberman reports from Jerusalem with the details.
Hi, this is Danny Oberman from B2B Khan for Weed Talk News in southern Jerusalem at Cafe Tal. The hottest news this week coming out of Israel is from a company called Terragen. It's a subsidiary of Plant Arc Bio and Siach Medical. A number of companies in Israel are working on producing cannabinoids in bioreactors at price points that look to be competitive with commercially grown cannabis. Using a fungi-based formula, the cannabinoid CBG is being produced in a microorganism. We should expect announcements in the coming months about production of THC, CBD, and CBC. It's anybody's guess how this will affect the cannabis growers in the future. The next story is troubling. Many Israeli growers are in trouble, serious trouble. UNIVO is firing workers. Panaxia has announced they'll be moving operations from Israel to Malta. Bol Pharma screwed up their reporting and in fact lost money in 2021. In addition, there are reports that companies are holding hundreds of tons of unsold dried flower. This won't end well for many growers. The other side of the equation is that the cannabis medtech realm is absolutely thriving. Check out the websites of Israeli universities, whom almost all have departments for cannabis and cannabinoid research. This is Danny Oberman, B2B Khan for We Talk News from Jerusalem, Israel.
And finally, here's your chance to have a hand in crafting cannabis content at next year's South by Southwest Festival. The festival's official panel picker is now open to the public and lets you browse through a variety of panel discussion topics you may or may not want to see on the stages in Austin, Texas next year. But unlike previous years, now you can actually search by the term cannabis, which gives you a whopping list of 73 different panel topics to potentially choose from. The window to vote closes on August 21st, so be sure to log on to panelpicker.sxsw.com to share your 2 stoner cents. It's always exciting to see more cannabis education opportunities coming to the public. After all, it's a whole new world of weed out there with a lot to learn. And remember to use it wisely. That's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Hey, You want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand